Good evening. Gumba Malgun, Gumanani Gianadu, Yurigari State Library of Queensland Gu, which is good evening, it's good to see you, and welcome friends to the State Library of Queensland in Burragum, which is the traditional language of the community that I grew up on the Darling Downs. I'm Vicky McDonald, and it's my great privilege to be the State Librarian and CEO here at the State Library of Queensland, your state library. And I'd also like to welcome you to this much anticipated Game Changers event with Stephen Page AO. I also would like to begin by acknowledging Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and their continuing connection to land and as custodians of stories for millennia. At State Library, we are inspired by this tradition in our work to share and preserve Queensland's memory for future generations. I extend a very warm welcome to our speaker, the absolutely game-changing choreographer and artistic director of Bangarra Dance Theatre, Stephen Page AO. So Stephen did admit to me earlier this is his first visit to State Library of Queensland, but I'm sure it will not be his last. So welcome, Stephen. Fantastic to have you here.
My spirit was here before you.
Thank you. I also welcome our facilitator, arts producer and educator Janelle Christofis, members of the Library Board of Queensland, the Queensland Library Foundation Council and the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame Management Committee and Induction Committee. We also welcome our founding partner, the QUT Business School, and generous sponsors, Picture Partners, Channel 7, Morgans and Ray White, and friends and supporters of State Library joining us here in the auditorium as well as online tonight. Game Changers is a Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame initiative, a partnership between QUT Business School, the State Library of Queensland and the Queensland Library Foundation. The Foundation supports the Game Changer series and many other important projects. If you value what this brings to the community, please consider making a tax-deductible donation to the Queensland Library Foundation to inspire more possibilities through knowledge, stories and creativity. As you probably guessed, we're absolutely thrilled to have Stephen Page with us this evening. Not just because he is a superstar on the global stage, but because, like State Library, storytelling is at the heart of what he does. Stephen and his colleagues at Bangarra Dance Theatre are fire makers and storytellers, and they have been part of the theatre landscape for over 30 years. Bangarra means to make fire in the Wiradjuri language, and the company is one of the only all First Nations dance companies in the world. It is at the forefront of arts and culture in Australia and internationally. Closer to home, Stephen is a Nunukul Munaldjali man of the Yugambeh Nation. One of 12 children in the very talented Page family, Stephen grew up in Mount Gravatt East and attended Cavendish Road High School. Yes. Stephen is a much admired creative business leader, epitomising resilience, guardianship, collaboration and bold vision. A local boy made very good. Janelle Christofis will be expertly facilitating this evening's conversation. Thank you, Janelle. And Janelle is an arts producer, educator and advocator. She and Stephen are dear friends and have worked closely together at QPAC. For over 20 years, Janelle co-presented Bangarra's annual season of works. Tonight's conversation is broadcast on Facebook Live and on State Library of Queensland's live stream page. So tonight we'll be using Slido to collect questions from both online and auditorium audiences. So if you go to slido.com and enter the event code QBLHOF, or simply scan the QR code that appears on the screen throughout the event, and we'll bring the QR code up throughout the evening. Slido.com is very democratic. You can vote for people's questions, and the questions with the most votes go to the top, so do check Slido.com out. Janelle will do her best to get to as many questions as possible. If you experience connection issues on our website, head over to the Facebook page to view the talk there. And if you are sharing your thoughts about tonight's conversation on social media, please use the hashtag QBLHOF. Finally, I'd like to invite you to Queensland to a Tea exhibition, which is here on level 2 in the SLQ gallery after Game Changers. So when you're leaving tonight's conversation, if you just go straight ahead, you'll be going into the SLQ gallery to see our latest exhibition, Queensland to a Tea, which gives you a unique perspective on Queensland's social history. We've arranged that the exhibition will be open tonight, so you will have that special viewing. And it certainly shows Queensland's unique history in fun and fascinating ways. If you love our thought-provoking talks here at State Library, you may also be interested in an exciting panel event that we've got coming up called Legacy Reflections on Mabo. The panel will include co-curator and daughter of Corky Mabo, Gail Mabo, as well as Queensland contributing artist Judy Watson, who's in the audience with us this evening. So Judy will be back, as well as Katina Davidson. And this free event will be on site and online on Wednesday, the 24th of August at 6 p.m. And you'll find all the details on our website. But for now, I do hope you enjoy the conversation, and please invite Janelle and Stephen to the stage. Thank you.
Hello and welcome. I'd like to start with the Auslan interpreters, Candice Wellington and Jamie Woodcock. Thank you. And Farley Ward, who's photographing this event, the photographer Farley, hi. And a small housekeeping note, if anyone needs to leave for any reason, please use the door at I suppose it's my right, of the top of the steps. And a reminder, as Vicky said, that we're using Slido tonight, so please log on to Slido and enter the code for any questions you might have for Stephen. And if you like anyone else's questions, you can vote for them as well. And I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we gather this evening, the Yugambeh and Turrbal people, and pay respects to their elders, past, present, and future. Just a little bit more about Stephen.
Oh.
Stephen Page, AO, is a choreographer, a filmmaker, a director of theatre, festivals and ceremony, and a storyteller. He is an innovator and a trailblazer in the way he has transformed First Nations storytelling through performing arts. In addition to his Order of Australia, Stephen has received a NAIDOC Lifetime Achievement Award, a J.C. Williamson Award, an Australia Council Dance Award for significant contributions to the cultural and artistic fabric of the nation, and numerous other Helpman, Deadly and Film Awards, just numerous other Helpman and Deadly Awards. Film credits include the full-length film Spear, Brand New Day, The Sapphires and the Freeman documentary. He's directed major festivals and events, the Adelaide Festival, the opening and closing ceremonies for the 2000 Olympic Games, and he created a new work for the Gold Coast 2018 Commonwealth Games opening ceremony. As mentioned, Stephen has been the artistic director of Bangarra Dance Theatre since 1991 and choreographed over 27 signature works for the company. His most recent work being Wajong, Not the Past, an epic scale contemporary corroboree, bringing together 17 dancers, 4 musicians and 5 actors in the language of his father's Munaldjali clan of Yugambeh country. Stephen, as mentioned, you're a Brisbane boy from Mount Gravatt, the 10th of 12 children, raised by your mother, Doreen, a saltwater Nunukul woman from Bangarra or Stradbroke Island, and your father, Roy, a freshwater Munaldjali man from Yugambeh Nation of South East Queensland. How did your formative years prepare you for a career in the arts?
Okay, I've got to try to summarise my memory. I'm sure all of you have seen too much of me over the last year, and you probably know this story more than I do. Well, not really, but look, I've just always said, I don't know, something must have been happening when I was born. Something must have lined up, or my father might have been singing a song and shaking his leg, I'm not sure. But I, 16 years in Brisbane. I was born in 1965. By that stage, I think Francis is here tonight. Francis, what number are you? You're 1, 2, 3, 5. And No, I know, because Franny and I are roughly, I think, Franny, we're 10 years apart. 10 years apart, yeah. Because I got scared because Hunter said, oh, you're going to be 60 in 2025. And I said, thanks, Hunter. and then my niece told me that Francis was 70 in 2025. I think that's right, yeah. You're an October baby, I'm a December baby. Maybe we should do a party together. What do you think? But the point I'm making is, 65 into the early 70s, I'm in primary school. By the end of the 70s, I'm finishing up high school. By the beginning of the 80s, I'm a 17-year-old arriving in Sydney, So, and then for the last 2 years, I've been in Sydney. So when you say what, yes, your childhood does. Mum and Dad, the generation that they came from, the unknown, the challenges, the trauma that they would have carried, and learning how to accept that, the mental health challenges that they would have gone through, all of that, let alone trying to, the love of fresh water and salt water, have these clan of 12 kids, and 3 girls, a boy, 3 girls, the deadliest boy, and then and then the last 4, which were quite close. So the siblings are all quite close. We in terms of, from 12 months to 18 months to 2 years to 4 years. So there's a variation between the gaps of the 12. We probably would have had about 16. I think Mum had a couple of miscarriages. David was a twin. Imagine having 2 of David. So yes, it shaped me, all those experiences. Being in a city, Mum had to leave, and the oldest girls, most of the girls had it tough, like working at a young age, and whether it's biscuit factories or shoe factories or the pineapple cannery at quite a young age, especially the oldest 2 and 3, there's a great work ethic. My father had great principles. He was had amazing work ethic. He did everything from, electric linesman to rail, any job he could get, and plus he was in a generation where his mother was challenged by our social environment, politically, celebrating their culture, forbidden from language and displaced, all those common social shifts is from that generation, especially in a lot of southern urban environments, displacement and all that shapes you. So was I aware then? You're not, you can only be aware when you reflect back. So, but it's the clanship, the family, the love, the trauma, the ups, the downs, the crazy, dysfunctional energies, everything, it naturally does shape you. And, we were exposed to quite a lot of personal challenges within the family. So by the time I got to college, I think I was trying to get the first plane out because I thought, I'm going to go crazy if I stay in this family. No, I wasn't going to say that. But I left school in year 11. My sisters, I think Donna and Gail, because they went to McGregor High, and they were sort of given the opportunities at that stage to further their education through to 11 and 12. I tried to, Mum was trying to push me through that. I was rebellious at school in year 11, and Mum said, go and get a job if you can't go back. Take a week or 2, but go back because, I was a bit corked up in high school. But, it was that, and for some reason I got connected to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Legal Service, and Barry Walsh was a partner of my auntie, my cousin, I call her Auntie, Lorraine, and he was working at the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Legal Service in Roma Street, and, Vivian Walker was working there. I think that's Cheryl Brickena. I met a lot of cousins and families, and Auntie Cecilia Smith, I used to see her, and, Auntie Udru Nunukul. I just seen through this foundation of legal, social voice and opinion at a young age, that shaped me as well. That was my first taste of resistance and a political voice. And then I saw a poster of the Aboriginal and Islander Dance Theatre, and now it's called NAISDA, and it was a college set up by an African American in the early 70s, and everybody else, and it was the only one of its kind, and they just had an advertisement for careers in dance. And then my other cousin, Marcia Bori, was working, I'll probably get this all wrong, but through Aboriginal study and education and so forth, and she helped put an application in for me, and pretty much in 6 months I was on TAA, and I was in Sydney and got to live with my sister-in-law, Kerry Saylor, and crazy world of Sydney in the 82. Can you imagine what Sydney was like? All my father could think of was King's Cross, and I was like, Dad, I'm not going to be a stripper, I'm not going to be a prostitute, I'm not going to, because at that time that's all he would imagine. And I think also too, the girls left, the two eldest, they all got married young, and they all, they travelled. Jerry travelled away, and Janice travelled away, and in a way, I think there's just not enough room in that House Commission house. You'd get promoted in each. As soon as I kept saying, "Hurry up, a sibling, get out, so I can get a room on my own." And but that's all informative. My father wasn't allowed to laugh because he had the loudest laugh, and he had a pillow. My mum would give him a pillow so he wouldn't make noise. Because if we were all laughing, watching the colour TV that Dad got from the dump and used pliers to fix it, and Dad was the best handyman, he would take us to, our exhibition was going to the dump on Sundays because we would collect all these things, and Dad he was just amazing. His hands, his craftsmanship was amazing. And anyway, the point I'm making is I think all of that, and watching, Mum was into ballroom from Cloudland days, and Dad loved country and western, Charlie Pride, and Rawlene loved Elvis. She cried for 4 days when he died, and the Beatles, and we were popular culture. It was all in the house, and I suppose that was my first taste of contemporary and what that was. But then, every now and again, we'd shift from that concrete environment, and the girls were much more closer to being on country, of Dad's country, and connection with Mum's country. So there was always this thing of family and clan, and our Mum and Father side, they were always there, and they knew that there was this hub in this House Commission in Marikabat, because that was the place to go if you wanted to have a good sing-along and you wanted to have a story. Or you wanted to see David do the best floor show, drag show in town. So when you say, what shaped you? I suppose all of that, and then having the opportunity, being there at the right time, and then going to the school in the early 80s, and then the next family was a mob from all over the country. I was going to be very short for you.
No.
It
was very hard to butt into any of that because
Lord.
it was so very rich. Everything about that life that you would have had, and all of the sing-alongs and recitals. And when you say that your father, your exhibition was his stuff, I remember David saying that as part of the exhibition, because she couldn't afford it, he used to take his nephews up on the road to Margaret Lookout, and the car was one of those, roller coaster rides.
David was my first director. He would make us boys dress up and perform. Jackson 5, Supreme. I did my first drag show at 3. We were on the hill in Marikabat, and then, that was established. I could be wrong. I think we were one of the first in the early 60s, because David was one, I believe, and because Mum had to come because Philip needed medical attention. The third, he needed medical treatment, and she uprooted. And obviously, Dad, it was tough for Dad too to uproot from his family to be in an urban environment. Like, I never thought about that till years later, and. Anyway, I won't go into the struggles they had, but a lot of that, and David was totally, she was tough, Mum. She would rarely let us out of the house, and so therefore we had to let our crazy minds go crazy, and David would do everything and anything to entertain, and he'd stir us up, and if one got in trouble, we'd all have to line up because we'd all get flogged. We used to get flogged in those days. Mum and Dad would be in jail today if they did that. But all of that sibling tension, and and I had a love of pop culture and music, and new wave music, and coming out of punk movement. I used to see Tracy Moffat walk up the street with green hair, and I go, who is that? David was a pop star young, and so we sort of got introduced to a lot of this sort of, this performance was always a performance within the...
And opportunities were
in the
there.
Page family.
So tell us then, in 91, you become Artistic Director of Bangarra Dance Theatre. How did that come about? because you go to AIDT, then with
Hey, you
NASDA.
jumped a whole 10 years there.
Yeah, I know. Got to get through a lot.
Oh, I know. See, I can't talk short one. Oh, Lord. See,
No,
if I
no,
talk
no.
my language, it'd be shorter than the English language, and it wouldn't take that long for... No, look, from 82 to 85, I only did 3 years at the college, and that was a stomping ground for quite incredible when I think about it, quite profound, because the coming together of mob from all over the country, and we come from all walks of life, of upbringing. You know, like there was this vulnerability and a tension between the Aboriginal and the Torres Strait. You know, that's early 80s. You know, there was this sense of communication and acceptance of what that is. I mean, you got to remember, I was born, a couple of years around the changing of the referendum, and by the middle of the 70s, we're in 10 embassy moment, so there was all these significant political imprints that were around the trajectory of my career, and so by the 80s, it was pretty prolific. You had the urban mob versus the traditional mob who had language, and were they deadlier than the ones that were displaced, and then you had the Torres Strait coming in, and then you had the fair skin and the ones, we were all from a completely, this outside view coming in, and somehow we're all shaped to be one, and what made us one was song and dance. And as soon as you sung and you danced, everyone felt good. And then we were challenged when we'd leave that space. And then, we were staying at bloody Enfield, and dear old Auntie Evelyn Scott was the first hostel manager in them days in the 80s. Remember, hostels were big and hostel managers, and we were all young saying, did we get a fortnightly check for, I don't know, $80? Like, you had to survive, and we'd all look after each other, cook for each other, but the sharing of cultures, and then having all those elders, whether it's Pittenjarra, Nora Ward, all them Yungu, my Mona Amalas and Bundak Marikans, through the Kimberleys and Ningley's family, and Jensen and Pinau and Miriam Mob and Cyber, like all this culture generosity that were coming through teachers. They were my first teachers and elders. And then at the same time, I'd go in Auntie Mum Shirl and Uncle, my brother Tiger Bales, and they were running, like there was this whole social shift. And I think of Bamali starting around the same time as Bangarra in 91, 92, possibly a little bit in its thought earlier, but these contemporary responses to traditional responses. So there was this amazing melting pot of birthings of these little satellites of cultural foundations that were still trying to work out who they were. And when I say who they were, there was a big culture shock for me to go to on country and hear language and to dance with mob that Yungu, and you weren't sure if they were laughing at you or with you, and then they saw this real fair fella, and then all of a sudden they said, hey, he can do traditional, what's going on here? And it's interesting, like my brother Russell went through that, like this real sense of were we meant to be in the fate of reconnecting, and that's okay. And what we don't appreciate and we should be respecting a lot more is the sharing of cultures. And that's one thing I learned in that company, and I think it's, we're all going to be different individually, we're all going to have diversity in our beliefs and our choices, but this love of culture and land and people and language and reviving that and caring for that was something that I took away from that 10 years. And then I became director of 91. Yeah.
Well, I just think you were also a game changer back then in those early days, because as you were alluding to, it was inevitably running parallel and intersecting with those major political moments, significant moments in Australian history.
Yeah.
There's the protest march in 1988 and Paul Keating's Redfern speech in 92. So how much, and you've sort of covered that a bit, did this period help pave a path for Aboriginal contemporary art and culture to emerge and flourish? So all of these different cultures are coming together and they're sharing, and it's an explosion of creativity and culture.
Yeah, look, Yes, you're right, and I think all that beginning in '89 was the year Bangarra was birthed in October around a kitchen in Glebe with Cheryl Stone and Malcolm Cole and Sylvia Blanco and Monica Stevens and Jasmine Goulash and Richard Talonga and bless his soul, Philip Langley, and I remember them. And I'd gone to Sydney Dance, you know, and did they choose me, Graham and Janet from Sydney Dance? They came to the end of year show of the college. It was out Belvoir Street, and did they select me out of all those dancers performing in their third year because I was fair, or was it because I had something? I couldn't tell.
Well, Graham Murphy did say that you were more than a dancer. He obviously spotted and identified your capacity and your talents very early on.
I think at that age, though, you just, you know, all I saw was having the opportunity to dance in a commercial company, a mainstream company. It wasn't until I got there that I realised I was missing my mob. And then I was like, how do I have both? And in a way, I think that foot in each world became that grounded knowledge that made me confident to become the director in '91. I had two beautiful brothers who pushed me up the front and then, go on, Stephen, you're a big notey, you go up the front. And, you know, I look back and then I thought I had to act to be an artistic director, so I had to talk real proper way. And then I was like, what's a choreographer? And then I was realising I was shaping movement, and I was thinking, oh, that must come from those days of David dressing me in drag. But whatever it was, we had all those graduates from the college that weren't getting work out in the mainstream because they had this distinctive style of contemporary traditional forms, and it really was the first spine of Bangarra's physical form. And they all picked me, they were pushing me, but Carol Johnson, who was the African-American director of the college, she was moving out of being the director of the college into wanting to be, I might have took her job. She wanted to be the director of the professional arm, and then she thought I was way too young, which she's probably right, but I was overly confident, that's for sure. But I don't know if that was just an insecurity of mechanism, you know, like, because people are pushing you there, and then...
Maybe it's just a huge energy that you have, and you know that you've got stuff to do.
I know, why am I always analysing it? Why don't I just
Yeah,
accept it?
exactly.
Okay, I'll accept it. Move on, I took over... Yeah. Well, no, when you're in this situation, you think you have to... That's my problem, and I think I'm learning that now. You know, he's teaching me that now, my 3-year-old granddaughter, Mila. But you're right, you know, like, I think, but what I'm saying is my family, you know, even my immediate family, my kids and Hunter and Sabine, you know, they let me have Bangarra. You know, I left them when they were young. And from that point, I didn't realise the next 32 years for me was going to be this journey. Because once it moved, it moved. You know, we hit 93, we're at Redfern Park, his famous speech, Mr. Keating, and we're support act for that. And we became this sort of guinea pig or this mascot for any shift culturally as a sort of little performing group. And then we were accepted in the Australian Council as a major performing arts company. We'd only been in it for 6 years. You know, we had the great energy of, you know, Robbie Bryan, Camilla Roy, Munaldjali, general manager, he was our first, he's been our only First Nations fella who has been our executive director, you know. You know, maybe they will change in years to come, but, you know, we were responding to the performing arts system. So therefore there's a box like normal Western system, and you've got to respond, and then how to have a foot in each world. So we were moving rapidly, you know, so fast, you know. By 97, we're doing collaborations with the Australian Ballet. Before that, the year before that, 96, we're doing the handover in Georgia, Atlanta, because that was a representation going into the Olympics. And then, you know, we became a fully fledged performing arts company, and I remember sitting with Michael Lynch and Lydia Miller, her first term working at the Australian Council, and they were like, are you ready to be, do you know what a full-time company is? You know you're going to get support? And I said, yes, because we're going to have a resource where we have a foundation where when you get resource, you become a privileged black. You know, and so therefore we have a responsibility to make sure that we are productive about this, you know. And I was really clear from there. Yes, I can play in your Western system mainstream world, but the thing that grounded us was us and the process of us as a clan, Jakapura, the sharing of tradition, was the stories grounded me. You know, there's over 27 works, there's over 40 works that I've done. If I worried about the black and white noise outside, there's no way I could have got any of that done.
Well, I'm going to get to a question from
there's
from
a biggest
the
mob
audience,
of questions.
but before I do, just to refer back to what you're saying, because you were, Ochres with Jakapura was a turning point for you and Bangarra. You were one of the first Aboriginal choreographers to do contemporary works, and it was a turning point for transforming traditional art and culture into contemporary mainstream dance theatre language.
Yeah.
So there's a question here from Stacey that says, how did you get people to believe in your vision?
Well, the first instance was when the college was started. It's because we'd already come from this this energy anyway from the college. So the graduates all had the same vision. I was just the one that was pushed up the front. And then I think it probably could have been any one of those graduates going to the front, you know. But
you had to back it up, though. You had to back it up.
Yeah, look, my brothers were keen. You know, I had brothers and sisters in Janamanyanyan and Jakapura Manyanyan. You know, I think from Percy Jacona to Jimmy Gagai to, you know, all these great support. They all believed in that vision. And, you know, they could feel safe in my confidence. Yes, I was arrogant. Yes, I was cocky. But there's sort of the survival ingredients you've got to have, you know. But as I got along, and even more now after 32 years, I'd love to reinvent myself because I think I'm so over myself that I just hope the next journey. Anyway, we can talk about that later. But I didn't answer the question.
How did you? It's gone.
No, it did. It's gone now. It's fine. No, they were just saying, how do you get everyone to believe in the one vision? I just think we came from that clanship energy, and so it was just an organic flow that everyone was striving for that. All I'm saying was that I put my hand up to culturally lead that in that mainstream space.
And so you did have a lot of collaborators, really amazing collaborators, stellar artists in their own right, and one of those was Jakapura. You've mentioned Jakapura. You've described him as the fourth brother in your story, as a cultural carrier, songman, dancer, Yirrakala man. So how did these people, how did these artists, the collaborators and Jakapura, help shape, well, what did they teach you about leadership, actually?
It was all in the art. It was all in the stories, you know, like us three Page brothers, Russie used to love it because we'd just bounce off ideas, and then we were Jakapura's eyes in the city, and he was our eyes when he took us on country, and we were the same. Like we just loved telling stories, and he brought all that traditional cultural knowledge. And then David, I used to love watching him and David in a studio, and you know, he'd get Pura with his language to create contemporary stories. And I remember Pura would get on, he'd be talking his lingo to his mother and getting permission, and then she would love it because he was, you know, he's a songman, a dancer and a yidaki player. Not all mob can do all three. What do you call it in Western culture? Triple threat.
Oh, triple threat.
Yeah. So he was a triple threat, and there's only one rare him. So it's a bit like David when he was a twin. That first twin passed away. Mum said, "It's okay, I've got 7 kids." And that doctor said, "Wait a minute, you got another one there." And Maini Teresa fell to the floor and she said, what'd she say? Bless the Lord. Because she said David was sent from God. So David and Jakapura together musically, I could just watch forever. Like just the sharing of language, and David could he could really get inside the spirit of a story. He'd talk about the internal spirit, and I learned that from him, and you can feel that in his compositions.
You can. Do you think that's why Bangarra's works resonate so universally? I mean, you can't watch Bangarra. It's such you
can't watch Bangarra without that score.
Well, it's an unmistakable aesthetic in so many ways. There's the choreography, which is the grounded, earthy choreography, and then you can't mistake that sound.
Yeah.
There's that vocalizing of language, and then there's that haunting, pulsating sound that carries you as well.
Yeah.
And everyone gets the same sort of experience. Even Bangarra itself is a triple threat. You get the culture, you get the music, you get the visuals, the striking design, and costumes.
Well, I think it's all the elements come together under the one creation spirit. You know, we start with a blank canvas. We said, okay, we'll tell stories, live theatre. So therefore, all the art forms from scenic to costume, and they all get to share. We have to have a story first. Like David used to, he'd get flustered. If I come in and I didn't have a story, he'd be like, go back out, don't come back in.
So how do you source your stories?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's just different relationships of families. Like the Bangarra family, Yugambeh culture was strong from the time Alma, Chris and her family, and so, like the relationship, the dancers would come in, and some of our dancers, some come because their backyard is 5% full of culture. Some dancers come in and they know who they are, and that's what we don't discriminate in our backyard. You know, you want to come in, you want to go to cultural university and learn knowledge, then come in a foundation that's 34 years of 65,000. You know, this whole new generation. This whole new generation, they're all distracted by that digital poison. You know, they don't want to go back and listen to knowledge. They think they know it because they can just Google. But, you've got to find a balance to keep them grounded in that organic way and still find yourself in that space, the digital space. Anyway.
I want to ask you about the
I jumped all over the
going
place
to
then.
country on a regular basis, but we do need to...
I did want to finish that, but that's okay. I don't know what I said.
There's a question about when you're talking about becoming a company and having to get the funding.
I wanted to talk about David because because he'd be locked in that cave on his own. I was lucky in a way because I could go out and have 16 dancers in front of me, like a footy team. And every time we do an opening night, that's like a grand final every time. Because the dancers, they just don't pop up and you put an Aboriginal ever-ready battery in. Like there's a big shift in maintaining the body and the understanding the cultural story, all those mechanisms. And David, he'd be locked in that room and, some days I go in and he'd go, I can't do it today, I'm bogged down. And I go, don't worry, it's all right. And then, what would get us through? He'd go, what about that time when Roy Lang... And we'd just go back and tell a story from home. And then he always, or I would say something, like, remember a time, because I just didn't want him to feel pressured, David struggled the most, I think, between him and I in terms of responding to that Western system. And, you got Bangarra, he was delivering a soundtrack for 25 years every year. Not even Prince or Michael Jackson could do that. He was changing the soundtrack to this landscape. He was working the song men and women that were in that studio, from Uncle Archie to Chaka to Auntie Ruby to all those different elders. I think I used to go in that room and think, wow, they'd all had their headphones on, and some of them would have their headphones on for the first time and they'd love it, and they'd look at him through the glass and he would tell them a little story, and then they would just do the crossover and fusion of ideas. So maybe our energy, people felt safe with that, or people felt they could work with that, and David had the biggest heart of all. Like he used to get me sometime, he'd go, you're getting too white, come here. And I go, what do you mean? He said, you're talking like the system, like don't. And he would shake that off and I'd come in and then I'd become the younger brother, because I was his boss. But he'd make me the younger brother real quick, and he'd make sure that when we'd go home, we go to Bethesda and he'd go, Stephen, do you know your cousin, that one there? And I go, yeah, David, I know them. Like he'd go on because
So how did you direct him with Page 8?
Well, Page 8, we struggled the first week. I almost walked out. And then he just went, you know what you're doing, eh? And I said, yeah, of course I do. And I said, you know what? And this is when I want to thank my family, because no one asked my brothers and sisters for us to be public, And we became public because of working so quickly through the mainstream. And I apologise to my family because we never asked them, if they were okay with our stories and who we become. They can go mad at me later. But the thing is also, like David really, anyway, I lost my train of thought, but he was very instrumental, yeah.
So, You've lost both David and Russell. Did creativity help as a medicine? And can other leaders use creativity as a medicine?
Look, it's different for everybody. We all, you know what? You know, we're not alone, you know. Suicide's a big problem in this country, and it becomes a mechanism because resources aren't there for us mob and communities in different levels, you know, from rural to regional to metropolitan. It's different. And I think art is a healer, it's a medicine, you know, and it's a huge part of Aboriginal and Torres Strait people's lives, you know, it's part of their kinship system. It's not just something we support after sport. It's embedded. You know, you have ceremonies for birthing and marriage, they're significant. So adopting those traditional kinship system and mapping it into this contemporary life is what I believe, and I know people when that does happen, it was a healing for me. I think it's healing of David's music it's a bittersweet situation because you can heal within it and you can go forward. I am just fortunate. I know each of my siblings found to navigate their own way. They would all find their ways of dealing with it, and that's their choice and personally to them. But I know, I'm assuming, and I feel the medicine of, you know, me staying there and creating a Bangarra shows. Yes, it was challenging, and yes, I fell over, and I was wounded. I was wounded for a long time, and I feel like now I'm able to, as I shift out of Bangarra and my contract finished at the end of the year, they announced late into last year. Took too long. I said, they should have just announced at the end of the year so I could just walk away. But I've been able to reflect a lot, you know, and I know the company's in great hands with Francis. I know the legacy's there, but I've been able to really just feel a bit clearer in the head about reflecting all those memories. And part of my life and my professionalism was us being so personal and public, but also because it's very rare to have your personal siblings in your profession. You know, you know, for David to look at me and say, he's my boss, but you know, he's my little younger brother. You know, like we knew, and you know, we try to protect that, and I still try to protect the spirit of both him and Russie's legacy within what they've given to the company, because their spirit and their energy is a huge part of it's a huge part of the heart of Bangarra's legacy.
And do you think that's part of what inspired you to remain as the company leader for so long, and well, not for so long, but for the nearly 30 odd years that you were there? There was so much richness and so many stories to tell.
Yeah.
And so is that?
Oh, I'm an obsessive black. I'm an obsessive artist. I'm addictive to it. That's all I know. You know, 32 years payroll. That's all I know. You know, like.
So one
I don't even know if
here
I'm going to have a job
says
after this.
One question from the audience: you've achieved so much creatively. What do you still really want to do or try? And this links up with another question: what are you going to do after Bangarra? As AD.
Yeah, look, you know, my son was quick. He wanted me to get out of Bangarra so we can start a production company. He already named it, took money and started an ABN. And I said, you don't even know how to run a business. You can't just do that. So he had the Hollywood version that we would move into film and do all of this. But you know what? That's fine. It's just lovely to watch his enthusiasm. You know, he was dancing. Him and Remy, our kids were around the growth of Bangarra, and they grew up around it, you know. So even my nieces and nephew, I remember when I did Kin with Hunter and Sanson and Sean, and just like I get really sad from it because.
Have a glass of water. I'll give you some water. It's such a moving
because
time.
you know, we have such a big family, and I feel I gave a lot of energy to Bangarra, and I feel like I left my family behind sometimes, and
you've lost
serious
family.
Yeah, but well. I know. But I think as brothers and uncles, and you know, have we done enough? Because you know, big families, they're challenging, they're dysfunctional, and they're wonderfully dysfunctional. But you know, I just want to be able to move on. I just want to be able to be with my son and my grandchildren, and I want to just
and
be...
you have 2 grandchildren,
Yeah,
granddaughters,
Mila's
and Mila's 3.
well, she's 3 going on 30, and... you know, and Ivara's the opposite. Ivara is as fair as her pop, and she got the darkest feature.
And she's only a few months
old.
old.
They both got the page nose, really. And Mila's the opposite. So Hunter said, Dad, I've got 1 Stephen and 1 David. You know, they're good. And Laura, my daughter-in-law, and Hunter, and yeah, he's good, Hunter. And you know, he had to put up with me, and he had to, you know, I always kept thinking, oh, I'm going through it, but are they safe? You know, because he's going through it with me as well. I think he's exhausted by my career, to tell the truth, and I think that's why he was so quick. He's so quick to go, come on, Dad, let's go.
He's pretty prolific himself. I think you've produced a really fine, incredibly young man, because you can't turn television on today without seeing his face. He's on fire.
Yeah.
On fire. He literally is on fire. But some of those other forensic shows and
so Harrows and Barons and Fires and Play School.
He's everywhere.
Yeah, he's everywhere.
So, you know, he's a pretty talented young man.
Yeah,
and
no,
I saw
he's
him growing
a
up
good
around
young
you.
man, and he, you know, I just try to be really honest with him, and he's lucky because he's had resources. He's had a great mother, and myself, and you know, we're pretty transparent. You know, we talk constantly, you know, and you know it's a big issue in all of us. You know, we're mental health and surviving. You know, we have resources now. You know, I think of my mum and dad and my mum. You know, like the mob just didn't have that resource. You just had to build that resilience. You know, and that's what we carry from our mum and dad. That's what we carry from our ancestors. You know, and I know with my nieces and nephews, and my great nieces and my nephews, and my great nieces and nephews, that they can feel like they do have an internal resource, and that is the resilience of all of us, you know, and we're all going to find in our own way and our own choices, but at the end of the day, you know, that spirit from the clan that come from my mum and dad will always be there if you want to swallow that and reflect that, you know, and it's a moral and a value that sits in a lot of mob all around the country, and it doesn't matter in your profession or in your immediate backyard. You know, cultural values and principles are a huge part of our life.
As an urban Aboriginal, you would take the company to country a lot.
Yeah.
And annually. What?
Oh, we're so bad. We're not even answering these 20 questions. No. I think you're right. I think all mob that, you know, like, I hate the word mob. Clan families around the country come to me, and they come to Fran, different song lines, Torres Strait Aboriginal, urban, rural, mob that are just reconnecting. You know, there's challenges, there's a fragility. And they say, hey, Paigey, you got a platform there, you perform at the Opera House, hey, here's a story. And so we're entrusted with this story, but the one thing I always want to maintain, that we take it back on country. Like Sandsong was a gift back to Niggly Lawford's family, and at the end of the year, the company will return to Fitzroy, go to the old high school, lay down the tar kit, put the costumes and paint on like we're at the Opera House, and we do it for the mob, you know, and we've been doing that for the last 20 years. And we do it just as good as we do at the Opera House too. And what we're seeing now through Sydney and Sunny, who are retired dancers at Bangarra, who run our education program, we're seeing the next generation come through. And so there's this beautiful cycle of inspiration and stories being passed through the families. Sorry, Janelle.
How do you encourage performers to keep growing, influence and adding to the art landscape? What do you think is needed to continue the story?
Jeez. Oh, look, I just think we have to accept there's no resolution in time. Life is process. And, you know, you look at it now, look at all those women in Parliament now, like change of government. The blackfellas are resilient because we put up with the Western tide. It comes in and it goes away. Our same issues get played out constantly. They just retitle it a different English word. If I hear never recognise or reconciliation or restoration, like you got to, it's always, that's the way it goes. It goes with the tide, you know, but you've got all exhaustion of mob from the past that are carried into the future of leaders. Like, there is change, but all I'm saying is the arts and storytelling it's a huge part of blackfella culture. And, you know, for me, that's where I become the political person, because it's through your art, and it doesn't have to be literal social activism. It can be, you know, people hate words symbolism, but there's symbolism with impact.
It's so impactful. What you do is so impactful, and it's not a sledgehammer approach. Even though you don't shy away in a lot of your work.
Oh, that's just when I'm frustrated
from death and
pissed
custody
off,
and alcoholism. You often sprinkle your sublimely beautiful works. You sort of, as an audience member, you then get a little slap on the face to go, hey, it's not just about the beauty of culture, it's also about...
Yeah, but also too, I think we have to accept the diversity of our leaders, and where you're from resistance, or you're a legislation person, or you're an academic, or you're a lawyer, or you're a concreter, or you're a storyteller, you know, and you know where you come from and you belong. And, you know, we're all, I think now in this new decade is, you know, this decade now in the 21st century, I think, you know, we've been talking about truth from the heart. We've been doing that as a practice right from, you know, 65,000 years ago, you know. So it's only because we're distracted by the Western system and the Western poisons that breaks down and dilutes down, and that's a contemporary part of assimilation. But anyway, the point I'm making...
There's an interesting question about how would you explain... sorry.
It's gone.
I started
look at this one. You two talk too much. How dare they, Janelle?
No, I was reading from Lynn.
That's terrible.
As a choreographer, how do you avoid repeating in your dances? Because that's an interesting question. And as far as I go to your works to see unique works, your groundedness in that aesthetic. There's an aesthetic that is, we said before, it's unmistakably Bangarra. So.
But why would you avoid repeating? Because no one says to the ballet why they keep doing Swan Lake. And they have to keep doing that because that's the only thing that sells. So
there's a couple
we're 34 years of 65,000 years. We've only just scratching the surface. You know, we've only got 27 works in our creative cultural pantry. We started with nothing. Those works are our knowledge. When a generation of dancers come on, you've got this generation of dancers that do terrain. That was only 10 years ago. It's timeless, you know.
And each audience leaves with the same exhilaration and the same
only you
nourishment.
can view how you view it. I'm not going to play with your ears, your bindang and your senses and how you watch something, but movement and music and contemporary ceremony, all of that is just a medicine to challenge the perception of your spirit. And if there's a thread of that can connect. The problem with Western system, it always wants to understand rather than accept. And we're just accepting a long, big serpent process. So that's a Western system approach of repetition. Our repetition is ritual. Repetition's in the way we meditate, the way we care for country. I remember going up when I was 17 and we went on just before wet season out to Darlinboy, Yungu. And before wet season and dry, I always become a 3-year-old because I like to talk, but to be quiet, what I noticed was that they were respecting the change of seasons, so no one was allowed to talk. So there was a practice in the way you quiet on country. And it's I never stopped talking for so long. But then I realised,
you're letting the earth speak.
I thought my father was quiet. He would hunt quietly, but just all the humane practicalities, like what we've had to shred off as black mob, because that's the true stuff that I want to be fed into our contemporary society for the future, you know, is breaking down the system. Western system, supremacist system. And the world in this 21st century, look at that orange fella last year in America. They're all, look at that orange Ipswich woman. They're all eating the... No, they're children of people that have eaten their own head of system and power. You know, because it's funny, because my dad used to say, don't worry, don't travel the same road, travel the one that you come from, and I always think of that. I think that's it. You gotta, and I think that's been a huge part of my drive at Bangarra, is to really just fight for that perspective and that Recean perspective, and we all do that as storyteller. Not everyone's a storyteller, not everybody's a triple threat like Jakapura, but we all have a story, and I'm just fortunate that I got chosen in my fate and life, this existence, to work.
But you know how to distill stories as well, and I think that's what
Oh, not always. You want to see me at home when I go home, Lord.
Now, we've got 5 minutes, going on 4 minutes.
But look what they said again. Janelle. No, Gavin.
The Lakes College says, thank you for filling the future children with our stories Thank you for filling the future children with our stories with movement, music and stories. We hope the children's children will be viewing your pieces. Wow.
Well, that's a good way to wrap it up.
Oh, we've got a few minutes. Just a few more minutes. With all of your works, what is your most favourite piece? Your absolute most favourite piece?
See, I always can't answer this. Because they're all a part of one big serpent of stories, you know. Like there are special moments through stories. Like they've all got a little shining special moment through each one.
A previous question before, which I didn't ask. Do you have a favourite sibling? And I don't know if it was one of the siblings who asked that question. But, so this is an interesting question. Who have been or still are your most important influences or mentors? I mean, I know we've talked about
everybody.
David,
yeah, but all those,
Francis
I've had all those teachers and elders, and from urban to and not just, I don't know, just all. I've been really fortunate. I've just had being in the same conversation as Uncle Archie and creating a work with him. I remember we did Spear. Uncle Archie was performing around. It was coming to the end of the 90s, and he was like, boy, what do you want me to do? And I said, oh, can you come and do like a theatre piece, but you get to tell your songs through that theatre piece. And I remember the first time I didn't know what we were doing. Wayne Blair just came from QUT. His first acting job was with Bangarra. Jakapura, Russi, Remy and Hunter were there. Then he's 6 and 9, and Victor and Lewis and Sydney, and this amalgamation of black fellas. And we all got to share traditional Archie story, and just sitting around in a circle for hours and hours. And then out of that, we just shaped this dance song story work, and it was like the spirit was stronger than us, and we just had to make sure we had a responsibility to care for it. And you know, I always say it's in the process. If you're honest to that process and you build it from there, it don't matter what the product is.
Which work was that?
Every work. No, because people used to tell me, people say, do you worry about the audience? Or what's the reviewer going to say? And I thought, that reviewer, they're not even black, I don't care. Like, who can tell me what I do best at what we do? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I remember Spike Lee did Do the Right Thing, and he said, how can a non-African-American version try to review what I'm doing? Sure, they can talk about the techniques, but we come from heart and story, so anyway.
Last question I'm going to ask is...
Who's my mother and who's my father?
Advice for young people. How do you find resilience and persistence over the years in the inspirational way you have?
All of the above, you know, like, I'd like to still think, you know, it's just all those experiences, it's just all connecting with all those energies. I get really frustrated if I'm, like David used to say, you're too white, come back. And I don't mean to be that in a cynical way, a little bit of me does, but just trying to be as grounded and as true to yourself, you know. And
maybe you had to
and then when you connect with people like that, they build that sense of, persistence, and they help you, they push you along, they work together, and you create a shield of resistance. Like the resilience in my immediate family, and they're here tonight, like pretty extraordinary, and that's just come on from the clanship of my mum and dad and old Granny Polo, like generations before that generation, like it's just embedded in us as human beings.
I envy you. I think you're...
It's the way we trigger it. I always say that. Like it's there. It's the way you choose how you want to trigger it. You choose how you want to shape it, If you want to disrespect it and let it all go, well, good luck. But if you want to acknowledge it and respect it in yourself, it gives you fuel to keep pushing.
I think it's time to wind up, but I think it says a lot about your wonderful family and how they raised you.
Yeah. Oh, look, totally. Like as I said, like now it's going to be a beautiful time to. I don't know, I've got to come back and then I've got to get a ticket and wait in line because I've been a city boy for too long. And that's what I love, coming, I want to come back home, and Hunter's going to the UK for 7 months. I said, oh no, don't get too white, no. I said, where you go to the best place, to see the royal family, Lord. He said, oh, Dad, he haven't even brought them girls up because of that pandemic. But what I loved about the pandemic? It made us all reset. It shut us all down and we all had to look in. And it reminds me of that meditative time when I was sitting in Darwin, boy. I said, oh, look at that thing come now, my father would say. And he said, look, it's shutting everybody up. And everyone's got to reset and we've got to look what's around us, distilling that. My father used to always talk about that. Anyway, that's another story.
I'm going to have to shut
You're going to shut it down.
Sadly, I could sit here for hours. The one thing that...
Thank you today.
It's been an honour and a privilege, Stephen.
Sorry, sit back down. Oh.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Associate Professor Paige Maguire, Director of Alumni and Corporate Events. I'm a Paige. I would be honoured to be a Paige. So I'm from QUT. Along with State Library of Queensland and Queensland Library Foundation, QUT is a proud founding partner of the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame, and it's a pleasure to have you all here tonight. Stephen, what can I say? I've just been blown away and I could listen to you for hours. Some of the things, I've got red pen all over my notes because I've taken down your wisdom, and I'm so happy to be here for you to have shared your wisdom with the community here tonight. Not only are you a creative, you're an influential leader, but more than that, you were so generous in your time and in your words around sharing your family with us tonight and how instrumental they were in your creative process and your continuing practice, both as a leader and as an artist. And all I can say is thank you so much. It has been wonderful to hear you. So thank you, Stephen. So some of the things I wrote down that you've said are really great, and some of them may be from your dad, and some of them I think are from you. Travel the road you come from. I love that. I really love that. And there's no resolution in time. Life is a process. I'm going to have to unpack that a bit, and for those of you who really need to unpack that more, you're in luck because we can revisit the conversation. The transcript will be shared on the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame website later in the week. So if you're going to be like me, I'm going to go back and reread this and really think about what you've said tonight. Also a big thanks to Janelle Christofis for sharing and supporting with us. It was very clear that you two have an enduring friendship, and really are, have a mutual respect around the art and the creative side of life. So thank you so much. Okay. I've just got a bit more, but you can sit down if you're... It's all right. On behalf of the founding partners, I'd also like to thank our sponsors who make this work, the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame, possible. Thank you to our principal partners, principal sponsor, Picture Partners, our media partner, Channel 7, our major sponsors, Morgans and Ray White, and our event supporters, Brisbane Convention and Exhibition Centre, Clovelly Estate, New Street Brewing Co. and the Courier Mail. We are really grateful to have this ongoing support for our program. As you can see, it's a wonderful program, so we want to continue this. Also, thank you to the State Library of Queensland team who've put this together tonight. You've done a wonderful job. It's been one of the best ones I've been to. No. And we know it's going to be one of the best because we have a survey. So if you wanted to do the survey tonight, and these actually tell us what we're doing right and what we can improve on, and so we know that this will be something that it's going to be a hard one to improve on. So you can either scan the QR code behind me if you want to do it now, or for those of you who have registered by email, you'll get an email in your inbox tonight, so you can tell us then. I think most of the people at the back have already gone out the back door, but if those up the top want to leave at the top there, you can through the back door. But other than that, thank you everybody, and thank you Stephen Page, AO, and Janelle Christofis.